Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast, where I seek truth in the world's best books. I'm your host, Eric Rostad, coming to you from the beautiful Books of Titans studio in Franklin, Tennessee. My goal is to read 52 books per year and share what I'm learning. I'll talk a bit about each book, tie ideas together from a variety of genres, and share the one thing I always hope to remember from each book. Today I'm going to do something a little different and talk about one sentence from a book by Haruki Murakami. You've probably heard this sentence. I see it quoted all the time, and the reason I want to talk about this quote is because I hate it. And the thing is, Murakami didn't even say it. A character in his book said it, and that's not the same thing. But every time I see this quote, I see Murakami's name underneath it. So I'm just going to have some fun here. This will be a short episode, but I want to do a few things in this episode. First is this. I want to consider the context for the quote. So what book did it come from? Which character said it? What was the character like? And what was the context in which the sentence was said? Secondly, I want to share why I despise this sentence. And then third, I hope to convince you that if you do ever quote this, to quote it in a different way. So first off, let's just read the sentence. And here it is. If you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. One more time. If you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. End quote. That's pretty straightforward, right? Well, it shows up on page 31 in Haruki Murakami's 1987 novel, Norwegian Wood. And the statement is made by a character named Nagasawa. He's not the main character in the book. That would be Toru Watanabe. But Nagasawa is talking to Watanabe in this scene. And they first bond over their mutual love of the book, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And then Nagasawa says this, well, any friend of Gatsby is a friend of mine. And then we go back to Watanabe, and he's kind of narrating things as they happen in the first person. And so he says this, and so we became friends. This happened in October. And now I'm just going to kind of read the part immediately before the sentence that we're discussing here. The better I got to know Nagasawa, the stranger he seemed. I had met a lot of strange people in my day, but none as strange as Nagasawa. He was a far more voracious reader than I, but he made it a rule never to touch a book by an author who had not been dead at least 30 years. That's the only kind of book I can trust, he said. It's not that I don't believe in contemporary literature, he added, but I don't want to waste valuable time reading any book that has not had the baptism of time. Life is too short. Well, what kind of authors do you like? I asked, speaking in respectful tones to this man 2 years my senior. Balzac, Dante, Joseph Conrad, Dickens, he answered without hesitation. Not exactly fashionable. That's why I read them. If you only read the books that everyone else is reading, you can only think what everyone else is thinking. That's the world of hicks and slobs. Real people would be ashamed of themselves doing that. Haven't you noticed, Watanabe? You and I are the only real ones in the dorm. The other guys are crap. This took me off guard. How can you say that? Because it's true. I know, I can see it. It's like we have marks on our foreheads, and besides, we both read The Great Gatsby. I did some quick calculating. But Fitzgerald's been dead only 28 years, I said. So what? 2 years. Fitzgerald's advanced. No one else in the dorm knew that Nagasawa was a secret reader of classic novels, nor would it have mattered if they had. Nagasawa was known for being smart. And I'll stop reading there. But that's the context for this quote. Immediately preceding that sentence, the quote, is Nagasawa talking about the books that he does like. And these we could call the classics. Authors like Dante and Dickens and Joseph Conrad. And so he's contrasting these classics with the popular books, the contemporary literature, as he said. And he has disdain for the contemporary literature. And so he's saying if you're reading contemporary literature and you're reading those books because they're popular, well, you're just going to have the same thoughts as everyone else who is reading that contemporary literature. But we, on the other hand, we are reading these classics. And so that's the context. And I think part of the reason I don't like this sentence, and I don't like when it's quoted and said that it's by Murakami, is when I think of the books that everyone else is reading, To me, that seems like you would be talking about the classics, the ones that have been read the most throughout time. And instead, the context for this quote is more that no, these are the contemporary books. So, but even if you are talking about contemporary books, does this match with your experience? Because it doesn't match with my experience at all. Because most of the time when I talk to people about the books that they're reading, and it's a book that I've read, and it's a contemporary book, and it's something that, is new and it's popular and other people are reading it, I often wonder if we read the same book. Because they get the person I'm talking to gets something so completely different from what I get out of it that I honestly wonder if we've read the same book, if we're talking about the same thing. And so we all approach books from our life experience, from different vantage points, from different backgrounds. And yeah, we may get similar ideas, but that is really not my experience. And so whether you're talking about classics or even contemporary books, I personally I think there's more value in reading books that are 30 plus years old and reading the classics and things like that. But my issue with this quote and the way it's often presented by people quoting it is that if you read a book, you're going to have the same thoughts as other people that read that book. And in that, I don't ever see that happening. And so my fear is that this is presented as a way, well, don't read those books then, because you're just going to think what everyone else is thinking. And that's not the problem in my mind. The problem is people are not reading at all. And there's so much temptation in just spending the day on your phone or on social media or on Netflix. That's the problem. The problem is not people reading the same books. The problem is people not reading books at all. And so when we take a step back, that's why I wanted to look at this quote and to see who said it, to see what they were thinking, and then to just dig into that a little bit. So let's ask a few questions here. What if Murakami was using this quote as a way to show something negative about the character, about Nagasawa? He is kind of a shallow guy in this book. Like, he's very intelligent, but then he's got a lot of negative traits as well. So what if this quote was a way to show those negative aspects of his character? That's just something we need to consider. And so when it's quoted as Murakami saying this, it's not, Murakami did not say this. The character in the book said it, and Murakami may have been having him say it to show a certain aspect of his character, and Murakami may not believe this quote at all. So I just think it's disingenuous to quote it coming from Murakami. And the example I thought of is, when you hear Hasta la Vista Baby, do you think of James Cameron because he directed the movie and wrote the script? Or do you attribute that to Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator? The character who actually said Hasta la Vista. You think of Arnold Schwarzenegger immediately when you hear Hasta la Vista. You don't think of James Cameron. And in the same way, we should not be thinking of Murakami for this quote. We should be thinking of Nagasawa. And maybe if we are quoting this particular line, it should say Nagasawa from Norwegian Wood by Murakami, something to that effect. And that's my call to action here, is just to be careful how you quote a book. If you're quoting James Clear in his book Atomic Habits, that's one thing. That's a nonfiction book. You can be pretty certain that what he said, that's what he meant. It wasn't, he's not trying to show something in a novel and through a character. It's a nonfiction book. But if you quote a line from a character in a novel, just make a note of that. Maybe what character it was that said that, and the novel from which it came from, and the author. You just can't attribute a quote made by a character to the novelist and then act as though the novelist believes that or even said it. It's not the same thing. So I picked up this book this year. I added it late to my reading list, Norwegian Wood, just for this purpose, to understand the context of this sentence. I wanted to be able to intelligibly comment on it. I see it quoted all the time, and I'll write back like, this quote is crap. Murakami didn't say it, and I doubt he believes it. But I wanted to have a little more information on my side when I did make statements like that. And I know it's a little kind of silly to get this worked up about one sentence from this vast amount that Murakami has written, but it does bother me, and the main reason being, I don't see the problem as being people thinking the same things from books they read. I if anything, people think different things from the same books that they read, and I want to encourage people to read. I want people to be reading books. I don't want them to be scared off from thinking they might lose their originality by reading books that other people are reading. So that's kind of the background here. Again, just having a little fun with this and wanting to share some thoughts on this. I actually did not finish this book. I've read 250 plus books for this project now, and I've only stopped 2. And this is the second one. The other one was Faust, and I read the first part, and part 2, I said, I've had enough with part 1. One of my rules is to make it through every book, and I spend a lot of time choosing the books that I read for this project. So by the time I get to a book, I really want to have read it. And this was kind of a late edition, and it was really just for the purpose of this sentence. Once I had read the sentence, I just was not into this type of book. I've read other Murakami. I didn't want to finish it. And so this is actually just the second book for this whole project since 2017 that I have not finished. But I'm glad I read this part. I'm glad I read the context for this quote to understand where it came from. Please comment in the comments for this episode. Please email me. Tell me what you think. Do you have the same reaction to this quote? Have you ever seen this quote? Have you ever thought about it in this way? Am I crazy for going into this much detail about this one sentence? Or do you see the same things? Or am I completely off my rocker and missing something? I'd love to hear your comments. I say this a lot, but I started this project. One of the main reasons was to connect to other people who were reading the same books as me. So I would love to hear from you. You can email me at Erik, ERIK, @booksoftitans.com, or if you go to the podcast page on the website for this episode, you can leave a comment at the end. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening and for bearing with the ranting here. If you would like to follow or learn more about Books of Titans, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and you can also go to the website. I've got a lot of resources there to help you find the best books and to create your own reading list. So I'll be back in a couple weeks. I will be covering another book for my 2022 reading list. It will not be a rant. It will be going deep into one of the books that I've just read. So until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.